Okay.
All right, good, good. So again, brothers and sisters, so everyone has a test, but you can't have a testimony unless you've had a test. How do you still find joy in the midst of the storm? Okay. How do you still find joy in the midst of the storm? How do you find joy in the midst of your struggles? Let's see, Sister Crystal, Sister Savannah, you're still there, correct? Brother
Yes,
Baker.
I am.
Okay, good. So, Brother Bakersman, we're getting a lot of feedback from your phone. So try to get in a place where you're quiet, where the background is quiet at, so that we can make sure that we don't, hear. Or either put your phone on mute if the background is kind of noisy. I know you're kind of moving around. But again, brothers and sisters, please let us know where you're watching from. We got Linda from Houston, Texas, out there. We got Brother Jordan Anderson. Let everybody know where you are tuning in from. Brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Reboot Your Faith on the Sabbath day, brothers and sisters. We got to learn how to get this thing right, and we believe here on the Truth Hour that the only way you can get it right is to get with Jesus, brothers and sisters. All right? So let's go ahead and bring the team on and bring the team off mute. So we're going to ask Sister Savannah to come off mute right now and just to speak to the people, welcome everybody who's watching the show, and tell them why it's important to maintain your joy in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the struggle. We'll get into your testimony a little bit later in the show. Go ahead, Sister Savannah.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for all tuning in and calling in. I am part of Team Truth Hour. So why is it important to maintain your joy through this outbreak or this virus outbreak? It's very important to maintain your joy for others, not just for yourself and for your family, but for others. When they see that you're a servant of God and they see that you know the book and you're keeping the Sabbath and you're joyful, that will allow them to be joyful. It's just encouraging them to try to be happy through all this misery and sorrow and all the negativity that's in the world right now. It's just for you to be a good role model for other people. And keeping your trust and your faith in the Lord. When they see that, then they will keep their faith and their trust in the Lord. That's why it's important.
That is true. We appreciate that. Let's bring on Brother Bakersman. Brother Bakersman, why is it important for you to keep your joy and your spirit, not just during this plague of the coronavirus, because everybody's talking about that, but we ain't talking about no more the trials and tribulations that we're going through in our relationships, the trials and tribulations that we're going through in our job, the trials and tribulations that we're going through trying to maintain, to pay our bills, or trying to bring people to the truth. So just period, in this climate, period, how are you able to maintain your joy, and why is it important that we encourage other people to maintain their joy?
Well, first off, I want to say good afternoon and happy Sabbath. And it's mostly important because, like Sister said, someone is always watching you at all times, and especially if you're a follower of Christ. They look at how you deal with the trials and tribulations that you go through, that he may, because a lot of times he kind of gets you by yourself sometimes when he wants you to deal with certain things in order for you to deal with something, so you can show other people, how to keep strength when you're going through certain things in life, to know that regardless of whatever it may be, that all things work together for the greater good of God.
All right, we appreciate that, Brother Bakersman. Man, they're lighting up the live feed right here. We want to say hello to Sister LaShane Blake tuning in from Atlanta. Sister Shanda Clark tuning in from Houston, Texas. Happy Sabbath, brothers and sisters. Lori Young tuning in from Indiana. Happy 4th day of Feast of Unleavened Bread. Latoya Potts, let us know where you're tuning in from. Brother Rory Potts, let me know if you guys are related. Tuning in from Albany, Georgia. Peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath. Brother Jimmy Joseph tuning in. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Oh, Columbia, Connecticut is where the brother is tuning in from. Shalom, peace and blessings. What up, though? Whatever greeting that makes you feel comfortable, brothers and sisters. But peace in Jesus' name. Let's go ahead to our sister, Krista Wells. Sister Krista Wells, finding your joy. And Sister Krista Wells inspired this subject today. And so, Sister Krista Wells, why did God put this on your heart to discuss today? I'm going to give you the floor. The floor is yours. And then, like I said, Team Truth Hour will get personal with each and every one of you a little bit later on in the show. We're going to talk to you about our testimonies and what we've been through and how we've been able to find our joy in the midst of that test, in order to have a testimony to share with you today. That's going to come on a little bit later on in the program, Reboot Your Faith, episode 2. But Sister Krista Wells, talk to us. Why did God put this on your spirit to inspire us to do this lesson talking about joy today?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Team Truth Hour. And I thank everyone for coming on today. I am Sister Crystal, and I am part of Team Truth Hour. We are coming to you today to speak about joy, to have joy in the midst of the storm. This storm won't last forever. Joy comes up in the morning, but, we must know that God is our joy and strength through it all. So we must pray and, keep our eyes focused on God and just know that, He's always there with us. What led this on my heart was I'm dealing with a lot of people that I'm talking to that calling me about, they've lost their joy, I'm not happy anymore. The world is not happy anymore. Everybody's upset and got to stay in and stuff. And, I was just talking to the Lord about, the world, the joy was the world. That was their joy. Not you, God, it was the world. And so this He led this on my heart to speak about, because the world has forgotten God. And, their joy was the world. Getting their hair done, their nails done, their feet done, everything, clothes, shopping malls. They don't have any joy anymore. But the main joy that we should have is God first. And once you have that, then you have joy of all the other things. So this is why, I just was, talking to the Lord about it, and, it just showed me how to talk to these people and how to get them to see, what the true joy is. And so this is why He led this on my heart, to speak about today. And I hope that, something said here today will, you guys will be edified and get something from this that will carry you through the storm that we're facing. But it won't last forever.
That's right.
But we just got to stay focused and know that God is ahead of the ball.
Absolutely. We thank you for that, sis, and we thank you for being obedient and allowing God to use you. And that's what this is all about. At this time, we're going to ask everybody that's on this program to call in. Sister Key Israel, if you can for us. Actually, I think I can do it. I'm going to put the call-in number here, 605-562-0444. And then the ID is 93155#. And if it asks you for a pin, then just put one in pound in if it asks you for a pin. But I'm going to put that in. So let's go ahead and see if we have any callers on the line as of right now. We're going to ask that you guys call in. Again, call in to the show. Call into the show. And let us know what your testimony is, what you've been through, what you've gone through. Let's until we get the callers rolling in, let's go ahead to Sister Savannah. Sister Savannah, people know you You share the word of God. You talk about building faith, and you talk about how good God is. But I'm assuming that there was a point and there was a time when your faith was shaken, when you was going through something, when you didn't know how you were going to make it. Can you talk to the people right now and share your testimony and about what it is that you went through and how you've are able to find your joy today through that test, turning your test into a testimony? Sister Savannah, you have the floor.
Let's see. I have many testimonies, but the one that sticks out the most is prior to me coming into the church. I was going through a lot in my life. I was working at a job where I was robbed at gunpoint and almost died. I lost a baby. There was just a variety of different things that was happening in my life. And I was looking for the word. And I went searching for it. And the Lord took me on a journey to find the truth. Now,
Sister Savannah, I can't let you off the hook that easy now. I can't let you just skim through that. You just skim past that now. You gotta take us there, sister. You gotta let it go. Because again, people out there, they're afraid to tell their truth. They're afraid to, you know what I'm saying? So let's go deep into it, sis. This is Reboot Your Faith. I mean, talk to us about it. Talk to us about that time. We know, cool, lost the baby, robbed at gunpoint, almost died, but we need some details, sis. We need you to get into that mindset of the detail of what was going on at that moment and pull that out, because we need to know that those who are going through the same thing, that have faith, yeah, they heard you. You see what I'm saying? They heard you. You was looking for the truth and all that. But you got to give us a little bit more than that, sis.
I was lost in the world. I was lost. I was completely for the world. So the Lord had to come at me. He had to come at me hard. He had to bring his wrath hard. So he was coming at me different ways. He was coming at me through the job. He was coming at me in my personal life. He was coming at me financially. He was coming at me all different avenues. And to get me to hear his word and for me to come to him so I can look through his word and find his truth. Yes, so when I said I was robbed at gunpoint, I worked at a high volume check cashing store. And $100,000 was something we saw on a regular. Wow. So I was opening the store one day, and someone decided to rob me at gunpoint. And for the grace of God, he was with me, and I could have been shot and killed that same day. But the Lord saved me and preserved me. So by me seeing that, I was like, okay, what is he trying to show me? Which in fact led me to go searching for his word, to hear his word, or to find someone that was teaching it, and that led me to my search online, and I found videos, and eventually I came to the Israel God, and this is where I've been ever since.
That's beautiful.
So he took me through a journey, and he showed me what it is that he wants me to do, what my purpose was. I also find, joy in writing as well. Write down what I experience and what I go through, and I've been published twice, so some of the world has seen it already. So I do find joy in that avenue as well. And I just keep my trust in the Lord, because I know that He's never failed me. So, that's just where I'm at with that.
Okay, well, maybe we can pull out one of those writings by the end of the show. So go into the archives and go pull out one of them writings, and we'll call you back at the end of the show, maybe to read something. Let me know in the inbox. Let's go to Brother Bakersman. Brother Bakersman, you're out there, brother. You've been through some things in your life. Only you know what they are. And then we're going to go to the phone line after you. We got a 910-789 number, a 910-789. Matter of fact, let's go to that call now. Then Brother Bakersman, we'll come back to you. And again, we want you guys to call in, share your testimony today. Share your testimony, and then let's talk about how you kept your joy in what you were going through. All right? And then even today, how do you keep your joy in what you're going through currently today? Let's go through. Okay. Let's go to 910-789. 910-789. You're on the line. State your name and where you're calling from. 910-789 area code. Okay. We're going to mute you again.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead. Who's this caller? What's your name and where you calling from?
Sorry about that, family.
I'm doing.
Happy Sabbath, family. Let's start this off right. How y'all doing?
All right. Happy Sabbath, my brother.
Hey, my name is Brother Philip. I'm calling from Augusta, Georgia. Right now, I'm in the military.
Okay.
And so I found the Lord in the desert. It's funny if you refer back to Scripture. You know, Philip wanted in the desert, and he met the other brother who was trying to understand the scrolls.
Right.
So it's funny because brother Hezekiah from IOG was my supervisor, right? And
Okay.
hold on, I'm trying to. Okay, brother Hezekiah from IOG was my supervisor in the military, and it's funny he started quizzing me, started asking me questions, and taking my nickname at the job was called Preach. I didn't know anything. I was just the only one in the shop that went to church on Sunday, right? And then he didn't tell me anything about the word, right? I had questions, and what he would do was we went to the library. We had an encyclopedia, and we had the word. And every time I had a question, he would never answer. He made me read it. And it's funny. I had to find the Lord in the middle of the desert.
Wow.
I'm in Kuwait, of all places. There are Muslims around me and Sunday Christians. But every question I had, he never gave me the answer out of his mouth. We read it. Family, I have you to know, on the Sabbath itself, we started, say, around 1 o'clock in Kuwait time. We didn't get done for like 12 hours later.
Wow.
I had questions about the eating, about disciples, about the tribe, about why black people are incarcerated, about why the Jewish and the Muslims still go to church on the Sabbath, but the so-called Christians go on Sunday. I have you know, family, ever since then, I have not gone back. And 2 years later, the brother baptized me and my wife.
Wow.
So I'm trying to tell you, when we found the Lord, because my wife used to be a 7-day Adventist, and now she's in the truth too.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, you know, how has now you being in the truth, how has that brought you joy in the midst of the storm? Because we know everybody's panicking right now. Everybody pulling their hair out. They don't know which way to go, which way to turn. Oh, this is the end of the world. I have these conversations every day with a lot of people. So how do you, knowing the truth now, how do you still find your joy? Where's that confidence coming from?
Okay,
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hold on, he'll be right back.
Oh,
okay, I'm sorry, sir.
okay. Let me see. Let me see. Can you guys hear me?
I can't now, bro.
Okay, good. The question was, how do you, knowing what you know, because you still tested, how do you find joy when you are going through things now? How do you find joy when the trials and the struggles come now? How do you still find joy?
Bro, this is how I find joy, because I know that the Lord had to test everybody. You can't be a servant and not get tested.
That's true.
You see what I'm saying? I go right to the word. And of all verses, the favorite one that everybody reads is Psalm 23. You see what I'm saying? Yea, do I walk through the valley of shadow of death. And now, me being in the military, I understand that when you look at the valley where he's talking about Jerusalem, it's surrounded by hills. The Lord can't lie, no, because he's not a man that he should lie, nor son of a man that he should repent. So knowing that he went through the valley physically and spiritually, and still came out on the other side, like that gives me faith, gives me strength. You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
Being military, it's like I see stuff, I see maps, I see drawings all the time. So knowing when I look at that, it's like, oh, the Lord he was talking about two things. He was talking about a spiritual walk and your physical walk.
There you go.
So having that mindset and knowing what I know, it's like I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier twice over. Okay, Uncle Sam considers me a soldier, but I'm a soldier in the Lord too.
That's right.
And that above everything.
Well, I appreciate definitely.
Just on a brother and sister. Go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying I appreciate your comment. We got a few more callers on the line, but That's a powerful testimony, brother, finding God in the desert and then holding on to that knowledge of what you learned to navigate you through whatever you may be currently going through or what you've gone through since you found him. So I definitely appreciate that, my brother.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And y'all continue to have a blessed and peaceful Sabbath.
All right. All right. Continue to listen. We're going to go ahead and go to the next caller. All right. We're going to go ahead and go to the next caller. Next caller. We have, let me see, 910. I believe that was the brother, right, that just spoke. Philip, you're 910, correct?
I am.
Okay, good. So let's go to Brother Bakersman. Brother Bakersman, talk to us, brother, about being able to find joy in the midst of the storm. Give us your testimony, my brother. I know life has not always been like it currently is. What was that aha moment? What was that dividing moment? What was that Mason-Dixon line, that dividing line between you making the decision that, hey, this is the way I need to go. I'm tired of living this type of life, or I'm tired of going through what I'm going through. Brother Baker? Okay, there you go.
The breaking point for me. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. The breaking point for me was when I got ready to start driving truck, and in the midst of me getting ready to venture off and do that, I was pretty much in a downfall in my marriage, and so going in driving trucks, I had no knowledge of what I was doing, but I was trying to do something to get myself back on my feet and have a solid career, because I know in being married, that's something that is needed. Being the provider is having a solid career. So that's something that I was venturing off into, not knowing what I was getting myself into. And so there was a lot that went with the process of learning that, but me not knowing the whole time that I'm going out to do this was the Most High getting me off to myself in order to deal with me one-on-one. And I'm not noticing this in the beginning, but I started noticing more when I really started driving. I was by myself the whole time, and in the midst of still going through this downfall and being away from everybody for 3 months at a time, and just pretty much being by myself. So I was pretty much alone with my thoughts, which was pretty much eating at me, day in and day out, being out there by myself like that, going state to state. And at this time, this is when I kind of started coming into the truth. I was dealing with a brother that was, helping me when I was feeling down and stuff, and sending me scriptures and everything like that. But I noticed one day, and I'm not sure how many callers live for the East Coast or in New York City, but New York City is a pretty small place, and squeezing a semi-truck through there is probably not the easiest thing to do. And coming from a small town in Louisiana, that's something you're not used to doing, you're not used to seeing. But going through that, I had no GPS. I never been to New York City, but I had wanted to do the choices. I could have stopped, and I could have gave up on that, or I could have allowed God to take me through it. So I chose the second choice. I allowed Him to take me through it with no GPS, and He guided me, and I was able to get out of New York City. But just being in tough situations that you're not used to dealing with, you're not dealing with them on your own, regardless of what it may seem like to the physical eye. You always have to remember the spiritual side of things, that even though you're going through things and there might not be anybody around you, you're going through those things because God shows you to strengthen you in the area of your life that he might need you to do for somebody else, because that's how he works. He works with us with dealing with other people. And it might not necessarily be the same situation, but hearing somebody else's testimony, like Sister Savannah, coming near death, you know, someone always is dealing with something much worse than what you're dealing with. But the joy in that is knowing that at the end of it all, God will still bring you through whatever it is, because he's the one that brought you to the tribulation, or through the process that you had to go through in order to grow and help somebody else.
Right. Right. Now, you know, you said something very important in that too, Brother Stubbs. You know, a lot of people don't know that God is still the author of everything. And we don't really bring into account or understand that if God didn't want you to have that divorce, guess what? You wouldn't have gotten divorced. If God didn't want you to experience the loss of that job, guess what? You wouldn't have lost that job. If God didn't want your friends to turn their back against you, or their family to turn their back against you, guess what? It wouldn't have happened. God allows us to go through certain things to get our attention for a reason and a purpose and a mission and an assignment. What happens is, when God sends us the signs, when God knocks on our door, when God gives us the warning signs, we ignore them. And so then he causes something greater to come upon us. And then we keep getting afflicted time and time and time again. And then we wonder why am I going through so much hell? It's because you're not heeding to the answer and the call that the Lord wants you to answer. Now, these people that may be guilty of turning their back against you, this woman or this man that may be guilty of doing you wrong, this job that may have let you go for an unjust cause or an unjust reason, they have assignments to do also as well. There had to be a Pharaoh and a Moses. There had to be a Delilah and a Samson. There had to be a Judas and a Jesus. The question that I have is, why do we blame the people and not go to God and ask God, what is it that you're trying to show me? What is it that you want me to see? Those people are just playing the role that God is having them to play in your life. You got to be spiritually mature enough to know that these things are not happening for without a reason to it, without a cause to it. So when we begin to look at things from a spiritual perspective, because you'll never get the answer looking at things from a carnal perspective, a mental perspective, you'll never find the reason or the rationale why they do this or why did they say this. You'll never find the answer that way. Because some things are just irrational. But when you start to look at it from a spiritual perspective, you know that God has an assignment for all of us to do. The question is, are we living out our own assignment that God has given us to do? Or are we going to just stand there and keep getting knocked upside the head by this individual, by that individual, by this job, by this relationship, by this family member, by this friend, until we get the point? Number one, we can't change anybody. We can't stop anything from coming from somebody's mouth, from being typed on their social media pages. The only person that we can control is ourselves. And are we being the best us that we can be? Are we ascending to the best us? Let's stop blaming people. Let's stop talking about necessarily what happened. It's good to talk about what happened, but let's talk about how we overcame what happened and how God has blessed us. Even in the midst of the storm, this is the reason why today we can still look good. We can still smile. We can still give a word of encouragement to somebody else because we've been able to find joy in the midst of the storm. Let's go ahead and please call in, brothers and sisters. The number is in the thread that you're watching on Facebook Live. But let's go to our sister, Crystal Wells. Crystal Wells, you've been on this earth. You've experienced some things. You've seen some things. Give us that testimony and tell us how you're still able to find your joy even in the midst of the storm. Sister Crystal.
Okay, I would like to give, I've been through a lot of things, yes, Lord. But the thing that I really want to speak about today is from a year ago. Thank Sister Savannah got cut off, and I need to re-add her. I'm sorry.
Well, let's do that after. Let's do that after you give your testimony, sis, if you can.
Okay. And the thing that I want to talk about today is something that happened recently a year ago to me, and to me, this was something more than anything that I think that I have been through. Last year was in the hospital for 10 whole days. And those 10 days, I had found out that my blood sugar was over 1,000. I had been walking around day after day after day with blood sugar over 1,000. It had went off the scale. They couldn't even tell how high it was. And it scared me. I got afraid. I was really afraid. I was so sick. And each day, I said, Lord, why in the world did this happen to me? Why? I've seen this happen to a lot of other people, and I prayed for them and felt for them and all of that, but I never thought that could happen to me. And so, I was in there, and I had been going to the doctor regularly, kept up with my checkups and everything, and he never told me once that it was high. He never told me once that it was high or that I needed to take medications or anything like that. And just put me in a position to where I was down on my back for 10 days.
Wow.
And during those 10 days, I talked to the Lord, and I'm like, Lord, I don't know what to do. Why did this happen? I mean, I did everything I was supposed to do, so why did this happen? I could never figure it out. And they was running this and had this hooked up to me and had that hooked up, and all these things was going on, and I'm lost. I'm just out here lost. I had nobody but God. That was all I had. And I was like, Lord, I have got to just keep my hand in your hand. I need you to help me. I need to get out of this. I don't want this. I said, take this from me. I do not want it. I can't live every day with this. Mm-hmm. This is not something that I want to be a part of my life. So, after the 10 days and I got out, pushing it a little bit, up a little bit. After the 10 days, when I got out, I came home and I kept praying. Then I had to use the needle. So I'm like, Lord, this ain't going to happen. I can't do this. I don't want to do it. That was my focus. I didn't want to do it. And so I told him, I said, well, if it's any way possible, Lord, I said, what is it that I didn't do or I'm not doing? Why did this happen to me? And so I had to keep going to the doctor, so I kept going. And I had to go to classes. They had to show me how to do this, how to do that. I didn't care. I didn't want to do it. So I listened, but I didn't listen because I didn't want to do it. Mm. And so I'm like, well, you got to get in your mind, this is going to save your life, so you better do it. You got to do it. So I buckled down and finally come around and said, okay, this is going to be a part of my life. I said, but this is not something that I want to be a part of my life. I said, but I got to accept it. So I kept going, and I kept praying, and I kept reading. I found myself doing more reading and more praying during this time. And because I wanted to really tell the Lord how I felt about it. And so I kept reading and kept praying. And so I went to the 3 months went by, and so my doctor said we got to check it to make sure that it's where it's supposed to be. Because the over, then we might have to up the dosage or what. I'm like, oh my Lord. So I went in, they did a test and everything, and when the test came back, she told me before I left the office, I am very proud of your numbers. And I'm like, what?
Wow. That's powerful. Make sure you, sister, and are you still there, sis? Okay. Yeah, powerful. The sister says she was on her back for 10 days. You know, sister says she was on her back for 10 days. And many of us have been through that issue where we've been sick and we didn't know where to turn and we didn't know what to go through or how to go through what we were going through. And God brought us through. And that's what we're talking about today, finding your joy. Go ahead, Sister Christy. You're back on. Go ahead.
I just couldn't believe it. That was my joy. That was my peace. That was my happiness. That was everything that I asked the Lord to do. That was everything that I asked him to do. We sometimes ask God for things, but we don't believe it. We don't believe. We ask, but we don't believe it. But I believed it. Because I knew I didn't want that to be a part of my life. I said, God's going to heal me from this. And I just kept telling him, you said in your word, I just kept bringing it to him. And 3 months, 6 months, it was, I don't have to do anything now. I'm fine. I don't have to do anything. None of it. It's gone. I don't have to take nothing. And I'm like, now this was nothing but God. Nothing but the Lord. And we have to learn to trust in the Lord. We have to learn to keep our faith no matter what we are facing, what kind of storm it is. He even had me talking to people in the hospital, showing them the word. This lady from some country that worked there, he had me showing her, telling her about this, gave out the phone number for IOG, for all the different other classes, and she saw me, you know, always watching, always reading. She said, this has really changed my life. I'm supposed to be helping you, and you are helping me. Now I'm in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have...
Hold on, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You in a hospital, and you need help, but you helping people from the hospital.
Exactly.
Wow.
I was helping her. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. She said, what is that phone number? She said, who is your pastor? Who is this? I gave her that. And so when she come in to bring my meds, and it's on the Sabbath or one night when she's working, she would listen in for a few minutes. And I thank God for that. I said, God put us in places. Sometimes we don't know why. But he put us in places just for the right time. I don't know if this lady, she may be listening now. She may be got baptized. She may be part of IOG. She may be a part of some other camp. I have no idea, but I was there at the right time to do the right thing. That the word, I had to give that word, and the same thing for me.
Right.
He proved to me, you follow me, you do what I ask you to do, and I will show you who I am. And he did. He did. And I'm just so thankful to God today because everywhere I went, those doctors told me, you're supposed to be dead.
Wow.
Over 1,000? They don't even know why you here. But if it wasn't for the prayers of my brothers and sisters, the calls, the encouragement, that got me through, along with my prayer. I didn't ask them to pray for me. I asked them to pray with me. sometimes we ask for prayer, pray for me. But we have to ask them to pray with us.
That's right.
Because we have to pray for ourselves. And so I just thank God for it. I really do, because I'm here today because of God's grace and mercy. That is the only reason that I'm here today.
Wow.
And I thank God for that. So that is my testimony.
And that's beautiful how, someone can talk about what they've been through. How they've had to climb the hills and how they had to dig themselves out of the dirt, mentally and spiritually. Because when something happens to you, it's like you're buried in it. You can't see your way out of it. You have to literally claw and scratch yourself out of this mental dirt and this spiritual dirt that you're buried under. But when you can still praise God and thank God of what he's going to do for you, even though maybe you can't see it yet, even though maybe he has not done it yet, but if you can thank him in advance, that's where your faith comes in at. That's why this show is called Reboot Your Faith, because it's time for you to reboot it. Don't you know when a computer is constantly loading and loading and loading and loading, but it's not connecting? There's something about you that ain't connecting. There's something about us that ain't connecting. So we got to turn the computer off and turn it back on, restart it. We have to reboot it, brothers and sisters. We have to reboot our faith. When we're driving in a storm, and many of us have done that before. We've driven in a storm, and we can't see like 2, 3, 4 feet ahead of us. All we see is the rain, and all we see is the snow. And we can't see, but we're still going in the direction that we're supposed to go in, brothers and sisters. Well, sometimes God don't want you to see where you're going, because he wants you to go by faith, brothers and sisters. He wants you to go by faith and not by sight. So this is your moment. That although you can't see where you're going, with these 2 eyes right here, it's time for you to look at your life through the spiritual lens, the spiritual eye. Because we walk by faith, brothers and sisters, and not by sight. Sister Crystal, Sister Savannah, I know that on the phone it's going in and out, but as far as the live feed, it's not like that. So I just want you to know I got you guys. I can hear you guys. So if you can't hear me, don't worry about it. I'm aware of it because the phone is doing some crazy things, but they can still hear us on the live feed. Now, let me share my testimony with you guys. September the 3rd, 2008, I lost my firstborn son to cancer. He was 15 years old. Now, before that, I was trying to get custody of him. He was 13 at the time. Me and his mom didn't see eye to eye. She had been dibbling and dallying in drugs, and she began to smoke crack, cocaine. I would get my son on the weekends, and I picked up my son one day, and he got in the car and he was crying. I said, "Son, what's wrong with you?" And he looked at me in my eyes with tears in his eyes, and he said, "Daddy, Mama is starting to smoke crack. Mama been smoking crack." I said, "Well, how do you know?" He said, "Because when she's smoking and using drugs, she let me do whatever I want to do in the house. And when she's not high, when she's not on drugs, she'll tell me to go sit down and she'll whoop my butt or something like that. I can get away with anything I want to get away with when she's smoking crack." It was not only the hurt of his mom being on drugs, but it was also the embarrassment of people knowing in the building what his mom was doing. He was angry with his mom. He began to pass judgment on his mom. He's 13 years old. And I had to take up for his mom. I said, "Hey, look, although we weren't on good terms, although I've been trying to get custody of my son, I said, look, son, your mother is a human being. We all make mistakes." I said, "But I got you. I'm going to make sure you straight. I'm going to make sure you okay." And so I hugged my son. I told him I loved him. Took him home with me for that weekend. It went about for a whole nother year. I'm still picking them up on the weekends. I'm giving her money. She's asking me for money for her rent. And little did I know she wasn't even paying rent. Because rent was based on your income, and she was unemployed, and she was on public assistance. So she wasn't paying rent, although she was telling me, I need money for rent. I need money for phone. I need money for this and that and the other. Now, I'm still taking care of my son. But in addition to taking care of my son, I'm helping her out with other things because my son lives there, right? I get a call out of the blue. This is about at the end of 2011. Social services called me and they said, Mr. Hawthorne, this is social services calling. We need you to come and get your son. And I'm like, well, what's going on? They say, well, his mother is in custody, and we have the two children here, your son and his brother, and we need you to come and get your son. And if we don't, we got to put them in DCFS custody, Department of Children and Family Services. I said, well, I can come and get my son, but what's going to happen to his brother? Well, if we can't get in contact with anyone in the family, then we have to put him in DCFS custody. I said, I'll come and get them both. Came and got them both, got in contact with her mother's side of the family, dropped his brother off with them. And although I have been trying to get custody of my son all this time through the courts and legal way and all that stuff, it didn't happen that way. Out of the blue, God fixed it, where he was just given to me without a fight. What happened was I didn't know that her youngest son was born with crack in his system. And so when at the hospital, your child is born with crack in your system, they have to come and test you every once in a while and do what they call drops. Well, that's what happened. They came to her apartment one day. They told her to do a drop. It was dirty. And that's how I was able to get my son. Now, that was just the start. A year or so later, my son came home and he was having pains in his leg. And he said, Daddy, my leg is starting to feel funny. For anybody who lives in Chicago, know a little bit about Urban Prep High School. That's the high school my son attended. That high school has a 7-year track record of 100% graduation record, and the poorest and the most dangerous neighborhoods in the inner city of Chicago, Inglewood. That's where my son attended. Eventually, I took my son to the doctor. The doctor did an x-ray because his leg was a little bit swollen. She said, well, it looked like something may have bit him or something. A day later, she called me. My son was doing ISET testing, getting ready to go to Urban Prep. He was in 8th grade. Brother Leonard remembers this whole time. And she called me in the office. And she said, bring your son with you. I said, my son is doing testing. I don't think it's necessary for me to bring him just for you to tell me what you need to tell me. I don't want to pull him out of school for that. So what ended up happening was when I went to the hospital, which is where Dr. Toussaint's clinic was, she sat me down and she looked at me and she said, well, Mr. Hawthorne, we have the results of his x-ray. And we looked at his x-ray and it appears that he has a tumor in the bone in the leg. And it appears that he has cancer. Well, when she said those words to me, I couldn't hear anything else. I saw her mouth moving. I saw her lips moving, but I couldn't hear nothing else that she was saying because the word cancer just shook the very foundation of my world. She said, I want you to get him and immediately take him to the University of Chicago for us to do a test to confirm the findings. I took him to the University of Chicago. We did the test. And it was determined that he did have cancer. We immediately did the chemotherapy sessions. He started losing his hair. He started losing his eyebrows. Chemotherapy kills cells. So they not only kill the cancer cells, they kill all cells. And so his self-esteem had failed because of the look had changed in him. Eventually, we did the surgery because the cancer was in his leg, and the form of cancer was called osteosarcoma. They had to take a piece of the bone out of his leg about this big, and they replaced it with an artificial bone. He had to walk with a crutch. He had to go through rehab. We did all those things. His freshman year, he began to get back on track. He began to excel in his schoolwork. He began to get gold ties because of his academics. He wanted to play football, but that was over with because of this particular surgery that he had to endure. Everything was fine. Everything was cool. A few months later, he started having flu-like symptoms. I'm taking him to the emergency room. Can't find nothing. Bringing him back home. Next day, taking him to the emergency room. Didn't find nothing. Bringing him back home. The next day, I'm taking him to the... Hey, look, y'all, I'm not taking my son back home. You better tell me something. Well, Mr. Hawthorne, give us a background. They should have already had a background because I was taking him to the same hospital. Well, somebody got smart and said, well, let's call the cancer doctor in that he was dealing with. They called the cancer doctor in. They did another test. The cancer had came back, but this time the cancer had came back in the torso area, where it began to invade the upper body and the lungs and those type of areas. That's what was giving him those flu-like symptoms. Well, eventually, I gave in and allowed them to do a second surgery. This surgery was to remove the cancer spots that they had seen on the lungs and all those things. My son was never the same after that. He didn't move like he used to move. He was moving slow. His body was just never the same. Now, being a 15-year-old and not being able to do what all the other children were able to do, crushed him. But my son became a man during this period because all of our faith was shaken. He was the one that was telling us, I'm okay. And if I have to die, I'm okay with it. Eventually, the doctors told us. 6 months before he died, the doctors told us that he was going to die. There's nothing I could do about it but pray. My son looked at me and he said, Daddy, what's going on? Is everything going to be all right? I said, son, everything is going to be all right. I said, we have to say the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to change the things I can't change, accept the things that I can't change, and give me the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Well, eventually everything that the doctor said happened. It was going to get to the point where he couldn't breathe. It was going to get to the point where he had to sleep sitting up. And eventually, after the treatments, the hospital stays, the therapy, September the 3rd, 2008, I lost my son. Now, that hurt and that pain would never leave my body. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not in pain and that I don't hurt for that particular loss. We had the funeral, and I put the funeral or the viewing on YouTube. So you can actually go and look at it. Black Ice Son funeral. I wanted it there because I wanted it as a reminder for me as to how I got to where I am today. Brother Julius was right by my side the whole time, and you could see him standing right next to me by the casket on YouTube right now. At the same time, Brother Julius is in my ear every moment. Black Ice, keep the faith. It's going to be all right. Read this word. Listen to the Lord. That's easier said than done because I was angry with God for a minute. We wasn't on speaking terms. I felt like, God, you're going to take my son away from me? The rapists are out here. The murderers are out here. The thieves are out here. The killers are out here. You had a lot of people to choose from. But you choose my 15-year-old son. I had a problem with that. Me and God wasn't on speaking terms. Death takes you through different phases. The first phase is disbelief. I couldn't believe it. The second phase was anger. I was very angry at the world. I was very angry. The third step was accepting that this was my reality, that I would never see my son again in the physical form, and I had to live a life without my son being present. That was the third step. The fourth step was deciding what I was going to do with my life now being the way that it was in this new form that it was in. That was the fourth step. So eventually I got with Brother Julius, and I asked Brother Julius, I said, I want to start a radio show. Because in my search for the answers as to why God decided that my son's time was over, in my search for that answer, I found so many other answers to the questions that I had in regards to God, in regards to his word, in regards to his plan for man, and in regards to his plan for me. So Julia said, okay, cool. I said, well, we're going to name the show Truth Hour. We're going to go live on Tuesdays. And I would like for you to teach. I'll read for you. We started the Truth Hour in November of 2010. 9.5 years later, we've been on the air almost every Tuesday. We've gotten this word of God out. I could have quit. I could have gave up. I could have turned the opposite way and worked against God. But I chose this route. That if I couldn't save my son, that I was going to try to save as many young people as I could. That if I couldn't save my son, that I was going to try to save as many souls with the word of God that I could by bringing them to Jesus. So brothers and sisters, how did I find joy in losing my son to cancer? By doing the work of God. By accepting his assignment, by walking the direction that he chose for me to walk in, even days that I don't want to do it, even days that I don't want to go live on Tuesdays to do the Bible Show Truth Hour because maybe I'm not feeling well that particular day. I force myself to walk in the direction of my assignment. And then guess what? After the show is over, I'm so glad that I did do it. So brothers and sisters, I found joy in the promise of God, knowing that what he says in Revelations, the 21st chapter, and I will read it to you, that times are not always going to be like this. And I believe in his word that, as he says in Revelations, the 20th chapter, that there will be a resurrection. So let me read to you Revelation 21:4. It says, and God shall wipe away the tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things will have passed away. As a child, that was my favorite scripture. But I still wanted to know that why, God? Why my son? Why at such a young age? Why, he didn't live long enough to commit offenses against you. Why, God? You got to explain this to me. Then somebody, I can't remember who it was, turned me on to Isaiah 57:1, and I'll read that to you. It says, the righteous perish, and no man layeth it to heart, and merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. God is removing some people from this earth to avoid them from experiencing some of the things that we are currently experiencing, and some of the things that will soon come, brothers and sisters. So let's go ahead and go to a couple of callers real quick. Let's go to, let me see, 773-712. 773-712. State your name and where you're calling from. 773-712. State your name. Okay. And if you're just listening to the show, let us know you just... Okay. Do me a favor. I know you're watching the program while you're on the phone, but we're getting feedback because you're watching the program and on the phone at the same time. So if you can turn what you're watching down so that we can hear you. Okay. Caller, who's this and where are you calling from? All right. 773-712. All right. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can hear you now. Who's this and where you calling from?
My name is Sonia, and I'm calling from Chicago, Illinois, brother.
Hey, Sister Sonia. We got a question for you. We got a question for you today. How do you still find joy in the midst of what you've been through?
I find joy in God's word. And let me just first say, your story was very, very moving. Very encouraging, and I'm glad that you shared it.
Thank you, sis.
But just to give you a little background, I'm a former Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm. I am too, sis. When I say that, my mom is still a Jehovah's Witness for over 50 years, and for the first 14 years of my life, I was going to the Kingdom Hall. So I can empathize with you with that.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you understand what it's like to basically dissociate yourself.
Absolutely. You know, look, me and my mom, we talk every day about this word, and she pull out her New World Translation. I pull out the King James Version, and, you know, we just reason with one another, you know, but go ahead. Believe me, I understand disfellowship and all that stuff. Go ahead, Dotsa.
Yeah. So although I wasn't disfellowship, because I came into the actual truth, then I just basically just stopped going. And unfortunately, at the time, my daughter, who had been just reinstated, who had went through her entire pregnancy disfellowship by another brother who had who lived in another state. And so, although they weren't married, she decided not to marry because, you know, they weren't right, his family. So basically, she got reinstated, and right after that, I found the actual truth. And with the weight of my new grandbaby, and it's just me, her, and my daughter, and I just was praying to God, like, I'm not going to make it through the great tribulation, Lord. I'm already way down, and I just want to quit right now. Now, this is before I even knew about the actual truth. So what the Lord did was maneuver things in my life to support me in learning what I was about to learn, which was, first of all, what I thought to be true wasn't, and that I've lived my entire life around this, and it's untrue. All the decisions that I made, my daughter not going away to school on scholarship, the jobs I gave up, the, you know, education all these choices we made only for this not to be the truth. So then I learned what the truth is, that we're Israel, which I was totally upset about because I knew Israel had totally and repeatedly disrespected the Lord consistently for, you know, so many times. So I didn't even want to be associated with that. But nonetheless, I came to accept it, did my research.
And, you know, in the Kingdom Hall, they teach that we're Gentiles. So,
yes, they do.
But go ahead, sis. I'm with you.
So eventually I'll start coming to learn what I need to learn. Now, the person that introduced me to Jehovah's Witnesses, he was also the person to tell me that we're Israel. But he was studying and still is, you know, with one of the other camps, you know, white people hate camps. So I'm like, yeah, I can't go that route. I know that I don't fully know the truth, but I know that the God of this Bible does not, you know, that's not okay with him. He wanted learned about the lake of fire. I learned about all these things. And now I feel like I can't walk this walk. So when I tell you that the Lord, he started, I'm sorry, forget the most of it, he started orchestrating things to support me. People just offering support that I didn't even really know, or, you know, that didn't really know my situation, but they knew. And so I also at this time was testing God, so to speak, like, if this is really the way, then do this. And I did that 3 times, brother.
Yes.
The first 2 times were for things that were important, but not like life-changing. But, you know, I needed him to do it. And then the last thing I asked for was something really big, something that if he did it, I knew only he did it, and this was the right way. Less than a week later, not only did he grant my petition, he gave me more than what I asked for. And he solidified that, yes, this is the way. I'm going to get you through this. Keep on walking. So I went from worshiping the false God, thinking that, you know, I'm worshiping the real God. And a lot of the sacrifice involved trying to do that, only for it to all be wrong. I'm now, you know, with my daughter and another baby now, trying to keep going. And then when I find out that what really is required, I'm like, I can't do this. I don't know how. I'm going to fail. And then the lake of fire is what's going to be the punishment, you know, everlasting, which I had never been told that was going to be for us. I thought that was just for the angels. So I went from that to now. So which I had never been born. Like I had never been born. And after that, the Lord.
I'm sorry, we're having a little bit technical difficulty on the phone line. Let me double check this and find out what's going on. But the sister is giving a... There you go.
It's so important. That's what I think that we lack the most, that we don't believe the God of Israel. That we don't believe when he says, I am not going to leave you and I'm going to deliver you out of all your troubles. He really will. And he did. And he still does it. He still is doing it. So I just wanted to share that this act, like no matter how big or impossible it seems, if you're doing what you're supposed to, even, you know, if you mess up, but you want to do it right and you're trying to do it right, he will hear you and help you.
That's right. That's right. Well, we thank you so much for that, sis. Powerful testimony, sister calling in. And we have a lot of similarities, that sister and I, because I know what it's like to grow up in the Kingdom Hall, which is what they call the truth. And I know what it's like to share the truth of what we have now with a Jehovah's Witness, because I talk to my mom every day. And my mom, although she's set in her ways, she will listen, you know, and she'll take down scriptures that I share with her, and she'll maybe go ask someone else, and she'll come back to me. But at least I'm dropping the seeds of curiosity in my mother's spirit about some of the things that either she did not know, or some of the things that now she's questioning that she was taught. So, sister, I appreciate that. That was a powerful testimony. We're going to go ahead and get ready to close out. Let's go ahead to Sister Savannah. Sister Savannah, this has been a powerful show, a show of tears and great emotion and great powerful testimonies and ways that we still found joy in the midst of the storm, in the midst of our struggles and trials. Give us your final thoughts, Sister Savannah.
I thought today's show was excellent. It was powerful and it was moving. To hear everybody's experiences and trials and tribulations that they went through in life, it just brings us closer together. And to know that we're all walking the same walk, just differently. And that we all walk different walks to get where we are today. So, you know, everyone's experience was definitely an eye-opener. Because, you know, at some point, you always think, oh, am I by myself? Am I the only one going through this? Right. But then when you hear other people's testimonies and stories, you're like, no, you're not by yourself at all. So that was very interesting. So I do have a scripture that I did want to read. It was actually 2 of them.
Okay.
It was Psalm 62 and 7 and 8.
Okay.
And God is my salvation and my glory, the rock of my strength. He is my refuge and my God. Sorry. Turn to him at all times. People, pour out your heart before him. God is your refuge for us, they lost. So I always keep that in mind. I always keep the Lord, that he is my strength. He gives me the strength to continue this walk and to face anything that he may bring, across my path. So with people that's in the truth or people that's outside of the truth, as long as we just stay focused on the Lord, he's going to bring you through whatever he puts in your path.
That's right.
And that's what sounds good.
All right. Brother Bakersman, give us your final thoughts, my brother.
Well, I really enjoyed the show today. I wasn't expecting to hear all the stories that I heard, but like Sister Savannah said, that just goes to show you that you're not dealing with this walk alone. You're not dealing with any of the trials and tribulations that you might go through. You're not dealing with them alone. Everybody is pretty much in the same boat with walking this truth. We all fall off. We all have things happen that make us question sometimes and get us, to be on edge, such as the thing that is going on right now. But that is why I am very, very proud and greatly appreciate the truth hour and all the rest of the shows that we have throughout the weeks, because it helps us reassure and get us back grounded to where we need to be to stay focused and walk in this walk, to not get off track with dealing with the Most High.
We appreciate that, my brother. Sister Crystal, give us your final thoughts. All right, let me make sure that our sister is on. And again, brothers and sisters, this has been a powerful, powerful show today. Powerful show today. Sister Crystal, make sure your phone is not on mute. All right. Okay, go ahead. Give us your final thoughts, my sister.
I would like to say that, today was, it was just awesome. I really, really thank God for putting this on my heart to do, because we never know when someone needs to talk to somebody and don't have anybody to talk to. And, testimonies that came forth today, it was just something that really, really touched my heart. And I thank God for it. And we're not alone. We are not. We are all here. We are fighting different battles. And, we got to stay strong and stay on the battlefield and just know that we have each other to lean on. And we need to lean on each other. And, I just thank God for, everyone being online today and sharing their stories and, the testimonies. And I pray that you all got something from today that will help you to carry you through these hard times and sad times. But don't give up. Don't give up, and stand strong and go to God. Look for him in the scriptures. Pray and ask for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and guidance, and he will give it to you. He is our God, and he loves and cares for us. No matter what's going on in the world, we have to know that. And, we just have to stand on the word and keep his laws and commandments and find joy and peace in his word. And that is my final thought for today.
We appreciate that. And let me give you my final thoughts. And we've had a wonderful, powerful show. The reason why we went early today is because I'm actually on my way to support my god sister who lost her mom. And we're at a point now where you can only have 10 people at a funeral now. State law, because of the coronavirus, you can only have 10 people. And she was there for me when my son died. And I said I have to be there for her. And so I just want to, my closing thoughts are this. I'm going to read two scriptures, one in Romans, one in the book of Psalms. All right. So the book of Romans 5:1-5 says, therefore being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, by whom also we have access by faith into this grace wherein we stand and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. And not only so, but we glorify in tribulations also. Wait a minute. We glorify in tribulations? No matter what we're going through, we still glorify. We glorify in tribulations. We don't get lost in the complaining. We don't get lost in the blame. Why me? We glorify in tribulations, also knowing that tribulation worketh patience. And patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. Brothers and sisters, faith and fear cannot coexist at the same time. And I want to close with this. Since the name of our show is Reboot Your Faith, and we read that dealing with faith, now I want to read something dealing with joy. Because it was put on our sister Crystal's heart to deal with joy. How do you find joy in the midst of your storm? How do you find joy in the midst of your troubles and trials and tribulations? Well, let's read what God said in his word. Psalms 30, let's start at verse 1. And I will extol thee, O Lord, for thou hast lifted me up and hast not made my foes to rejoice over me. How many people have come against you but have not been successful? So it says right here that I will extol thee because you have lifted me up. Now let's deal with Sister Crystal, who spoke about it in verse 2. O Lord, my God, I cried unto thee, and thou hast healed me. How many of you have been sick like Sister Crystal and diagnosed with different things and put on your back for 10 days and 14 days and 3 months or a year? But God has saw fit that you should not be in that condition always. I'll read it again. O Lord, my God, I cried unto thee, and thou hast healed me. You alive today to tell your story because he has healed you. Now, let's deal with Sister Savannah, who almost lost her life because somebody stuck her up by God point. Let's read verse 3, Psalms 30 and 3. O Lord, thou hast brought up my soul from the grave. Thou hast kept me alive, that I should not go down to the pit. How many of us have faced death, have looked face to face with death? But God has brought your soul up from facing death. Or maybe you were mentally or spiritually dead because you had given up and thought that, hey, I couldn't do nothing else. I'm going to read it again. Psalms 30 and 3. O Lord, thou hast brought up my soul from the grave. Thou hast kept me alive, that I should not go down to the pit. Sing unto the Lord, O ye saints of his, and give thanks at the remembrance of his holiness. Do you remember what he has done for you? Or do you only remember what you going through right now? We got to remember what God did for us. And we got to share what God did for us. Because all somebody else is looking for is, how can I get through what I'm going through? Well, you can share that with them by sharing with them what you've gone through and how God has brought you through what you're going through. But here's the final verse, Psalms chapter 30 and 5. Let's talk about this joy that we're talking about. For his anger endureth but a moment, and his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Can you be patient enough to wait on God? Brothers and sisters, it's time for you to reboot your faith. We thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. Please start your watch parties. Share this because, again, brothers and sisters, people need to know that they can make it. They need to know that they can get through what they're going through. They need to know that God gave them that test so that test can become a testimony. And they need to know that they went through that mess so that they can share a message of hope, of faith, and joy. Brothers and sisters, on behalf of my beautiful hosts, Sister Savannah, Brother Bakersman, and Sister Crystal, I am your brother Black Ice, and you've been tuned in to another edition of Reboot Your Faith, here live on POET Radio and brought to you by Teen Truth Hour. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.